Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Critical Eye, a program in which we try to give an alternative perspective on things that you might have taken for granted and things which the mainstream media often paint as dark and negative. Well, today's subject couldn't be more appropriate. The Islamic revolution that took place in Iran 41 years ago is being celebrated. The anniversary is this month. In fact, the celebrations are ongoing. But religious democracy is a word which is starting to be bandied about. What is a religious democracy? Is the Islamic revolution something which effectively emerged with the first religious democracy of the 20th century? These are questions that we're going to put to my panel today, along with queries of whether there's been a success or a failure, and perhaps also a little look into the future, into our crystal balls, to see what might be happening with the Islamic revolution over the course of the rest of the 21st century. As I said, in the studio, I have with me Brother Reza. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you on board. Doing a PhD on Hollywood and the way it portrays Muslims and Islam.
Since 1979.
Very good. So just carrying on.
Since the revolution.
Since the revolution. Well, that's a good bit of knowledge. We'll come on to that topic another day. Invite you, hopefully. Of course, we have Maulana Syed Muhammad Razavi to preside over our affairs. Also, somebody who witnessed firsthand the Islamic revolution and really has been a part of it from that very, very early day of its inception. And of course, we have Father Gelli, no stranger to our show, but here to give us hopefully a kind of a perspective away from the standard Muslim one, we hope. But welcome to the show.
I look forward to it.
Welcome to the show to all of you. And I think those of us who are familiar with the revolution, from that era, we had high aspirations because everybody ultimately is fed up with capitalism or hyper-capitalism in the way it's manifested itself over the 20th century. People were looking for alternatives even back then with the Cold War, which was actually bogging down most of the world in kind of fear and various states of tribulation. Now we've got rid of the Cold War, but we seem to have a kind of an imperialism based around the United States of America, the very same United States of America, which has from the day of the Islamic revolution's, if you like, birth, been its sworn enemy. Today is no different. Only a matter of weeks ago, we nearly went into what could have been a world war with the Islamic Republic of Iran standing off against the Americans following their murder or extrajudicial killing, assassination, call it what you will, of Lieutenant General Soleimani, the conqueror of ISIS, the destroyer of ISIS across the Middle East. Interesting times. Does the Islamic Revolution of Iran stick by its early potential and its dreams, its kind of objectives, the objectives of Grand Ayatollah Khomeini? Do they live on today? Have they fulfilled those dreams? Where are we on that journey and where are we likely to head? Hopefully we've got a short video which will give us a little indication of some of the things that have been going on to the Islamic Republic's credit in terms of the progress they've been making.
Iran is fast moving to commercialize its nanotech industry. To that end, the country's nanoscience technology and industry system is changing from a science-based R&D system to a firm-centered market-based innovation system. Iran's international nanotechnology ranking has improved from the 9th to the 4th in recent months. The country has also begun selling and exporting the technology in world markets. Speaking to Press TV, the Secretary of Iran Nanotechnology Initiative Council said over 50 countries import nano products from Iran, including Australia, China, Russia, Germany, Turkey and South Korea. He said the plan is to expand the market.
Iran ranks 4th in nanotechnology. The country exports about $62 million per year. We plan to commercialize the sector and boost exports to $1 billion by 2020. Our policy to embrace collaboration, large number of researchers and commitment to a knowledge-based economy will see Iran remain in a leading position for many years.
It's a sentiment also shared by top exporters. They say the new policy has encouraged international collaboration and helped accelerate technological development while providing access to foreign expertise and markets.
Our company exports nanocomposites.
Iran's gross expenditure on research and development has doubled this year. This policy has helped attract foreign investment, including capital and technologies. The future is bright for exporters like us.
Iran's global ranking has improved. This has helped uplift the nanotech sector, promote exports, and ensure the safe use of nanotechnology in all walks of life. We export nanoproducts and machinery to China. We plan to increase bilateral R&D cooperation with other countries as well.
Iran has a medium and long-term plan for science and technology, which provides a blueprint for the conversion to an innovation-driven economy by 2022. The nanotech products that the country exports are classified into industrial equipment, materials, and consumer products.
Well, no doubting that there's a massive leap forward there for a nation that didn't have any real infrastructure for this kind of technology to now be amongst the leaders on whether it's nanotechnology, whether it's aerospace technology, or whether it's just producing food. There are all sorts of successes which I think the Islamic Republic of Iran can certainly boast of. But I'm going to come to my panelists today. First, Morana, you've witnessed Iran as it was before the revolution. In a way, you saw the revolution take place as a young man, and you know where it is today. Try to give us, if you like, an overview of that journey and whether some of the failures or successes have been really, are well known on all sides, because we tend to hear the negative side in the Western press and mainstream media. What are the positives?
Well, I mean, if you look at the history of Iran, you would see that when Iran went through a very difficult phase, especially before revolution, the type of atrocities and crimes that were committed against people were unbelievable. I remember as a young student in Wazaif that the bodies of the scholars used to be brought to the holy city of Qom wrapped in plastic, because the way they were tortured was unbelievable. Their nails were pulled and tortured. So this gradually, although the revolution itself started when Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi stood against the wrongdoings of Shah, and then he was deported from Iran to Turkey and then to Iraq. And then at that time, reporters asked him, "Where are your supporters?" He said, "My supporters are being brought up in the laps of the mothers." And this is what happened exactly after around 20 years later. 20, 30 years later, the youngsters started to raise their voices against the oppression committed by the Shah and his father's regime. And this is how the revolution took place in Iran. I was there personally. I was there when the whole killing started. I was actually on the streets, and we had gone for Eid prayers outside the city, and we were coming back very quietly, without making any noise. Just we were not even occupying the road. The footpaths were full of people who were coming back from Eid prayers, and suddenly the soldiers came and started to shoot at us, and I witnessed personally people dropping down on the sides of the road, and I nearly escaped. And similar things happened to my sister, brother, who were all out on the streets. And then it took around 2 years, so because every time they used to kill, then they used to organize a 40th day and then anniversary of the martyrs, and it continued until the Shah was overthrown and Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi entered Iran, and then gradually the revolution took place.
So this is a fascinating story. It's an eyewitness account, and I'd love to hear far more about how people coped with that period. But it's interesting that you talk of a grassroots feeling against the Shah of Iran, an oppressor, a tyrant, an autocrat, propped up by the Americans, really effectively working rather like the modern-day Saudi Arabian and other Arab monarchs today are working as puppets for the Americans. In the Shah's, if you like, projection, he was doing exactly the same at that time. So the people rose up. So I get it. Rather like, say, the Russian Revolution or other revolutions, here you have the ordinary people fed up with a particular ruler, and they want him out. They got rid of him. But what happened, if you like, afterwards is what fascinates me, because whilst the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution was about the peasants and about workers' rights, perhaps, you know, it was about finances and money. I'm wondering about the religious element. Was there a conscious, if you like, decision amongst the Iranian masses that this would become what people are now describing as a religious democracy? Was that always the intention of Ayatollah Khomeini? Was that the intention of the other people who were rising up at that time? Maulana?
Yes. At that time, all the youngsters, I mean, everybody was fed up, basically. Everyone got united, they put their hands together and then started to speak against the atrocities and oppression that was being committed against the masses of the nation and people. So it was a very popular revolution, especially if you look at the referendum at the early stages. Everyone voted for Islamic Republic of Iran, and because they wanted to replace the corrupt system. And although people compare Islamic Revolution to the French Revolution or any other revolution, I would say it is not comparable at all. It's a unique revolution because it is based on religious democracy, religion as well. And that's why the enemies have started to undermine the growth of it. And from the day one of Islamic Revolution in Iran, they started to plot against it. And it's not hidden from anyone that how much Western taxpayers' money was spent to create a war against Iran, and which Iranians fought for almost 10 years.
Well, you're seeing on the video screens, you're seeing some of the aerospace technology and the ballistic missile technology which Iran has developed, and you witnessed some of the military men who are behind it. Of course, there are many institutions that have been developed under the auspices of the Islamic Revolution, the IRGC being one of the institutions which has been at the head of developing a lot of the technological military, if you like, self-sustainability of the Islamic Republic of Iran, something which is particularly irksome to the superpower of United States of America and also to Israel. Father Frank Gelli, Iran and the revolution, what impact has it had in terms of the way it's affected the West? How would you say the Islamic Revolution has affected the Americans, for instance?
Well, we have already mentioned some similarities between some revolutions whose names are famous in the West: the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. They were revolutions against tyranny, in the sense the Iranian Revolution also was against a tyrant, a despot. But there is a fundamental difference. The Iranian Revolution was described as a revolution against history. What does that mean? History, in the Western sense, is conceived as a linear progress from worse to better, from obscurities to light, and as entail a marginalization, if not a complete obliteration, of religion, the influence of religion. The Iranian Revolution was different because it put, in fact, God back at the center of politics. We mentioned already the idea of a religious democracy. Of course, you can't really keep God out of reality, is if you try to get the air out of reality. It's inconceivable. But these Western revolutions and the ideology which have succeeded them, which have been created, have also wanted to exclude divine mandates, divine principle from the public sphere. The Iranian Revolution was the opposite. It put back the religious, theological principles in the public sphere, into the sphere of politics, into the sphere of daily life, administration, taxation, norms of conduct, and so on. So in that sense, the revolution, the Iranian Revolution, was unique. And that is one reason why some godless forces, some godless entities, some anti-religion entities are so furious about the Iranian Revolution. Of course, I don't want to make too much of a dichotomy. I mean, look at this country. United Kingdom, Great Britain. The monarch here is also supreme head of the Anglican Church, to which I belong, actually, the Church of England. So the Queen is actually the supreme governor of the Church of England. So technically speaking, we are a theocracy. And also, not many people know this, but 26 Anglican bishops sit by right in the House of Lords. Well, the Lord's spiritual. So, in fact, there is a religious element in the democracy of the United Kingdom. In actual fact, I don't want to kid anybody, in actual fact, the influence of religion, of religious mandates, of divine principles is minimal in this country as well in the society of the West. So coming back to the Iranian Revolution, it has been and is still perceived as a threat to some of the reigning dogmas of secularism, which dominate the life of the West. In that sense, by contrast, genuine people of faith, even someone who's a Christian like me, has always been very interested in the Iranian Revolution, and also interested in the fact that so many wicked forces and wicked people are determined to destroy the Iranian state because it embodies those divine principles, practical principles, which the secular dictatorships of the West, dictatorship in the sense that they constitute almost a kind of an octopus which reaches out everywhere, which places a kind of exclusion from any practical influence or revelation. In the case of the Bible, Queen of England was, her coronation in 1953 in Westminster Abbey was given a Bible by the bishop that said that the most valuable thing the world can afford, the Bible, the Word of God. Well, I mean, what are the rulers of the West doing about the teachings of the Bible? Are they taking them seriously? Are they paying lip service, or do they actually detest and hate them? Well, that's why the Iranian Revolution is valuable.
Well, it's a very, very fascinating point that you've raised. This idea that the West and the secular West, which thought it had buried religion once and for all and had divided religion from politics, and in fact boasts about the idea of politics and religion not coexisting, is a very poignant one, because the Islamic Revolution and the Islamic Republic of Iran actually represent a direct challenge to that notion. And it does seem as though the Western media is hell-bent on not ever discussing the political system of Iran, not talking about the successes scientifically that Iran has nurtured, its philosophical or its rational, intellectual base. It doesn't talk about the women that are being educated more even than the men who are actually being encouraged to, but not only encouraged, but achieving better grades than even the boys in Iran. It doesn't talk about about the fact that the villages now have electricity, and it doesn't, least of all, it doesn't want to mention the fact that all of these achievements have been done with the severest economic sanctions, economic terrorism perpetrated by the very secular West, which says it wants democracy, peace, love around the world. But for Iran, they've made a special circumstance to turn it into an absolute economic, if you like, pariah, and are terrorizing it, literally terrorizing it with chemicals and drugs and pharmaceuticals not even being spared. Even those are not allowed into Iran without a great difficulty. These are the circumstances in which the 40 years of achievement that the Islamic Republic of Iran can boast of have been, if you like, delivered. But what of the future? I think in terms of what they're achieving scientifically and across the board gives us an idea of what else could be achieved if the Islamic Republic of Iran was left alone and not terrorized by the secular West. Join us after this short report.
Iran's scientific progress, no propaganda at all. Iranian researchers and scientists say it's the fact on the ground plus the international Scopus bibliographic database that say science production in Iran is one of the fastest in the world, even preceding those of Switzerland and Sweden.
We've made great achievements in stem cell research and cloning. We can produce different types of stem cells, which is a new technology in the world.
Using the origami DNA, we can now treat different types of cancer. We can also produce artificial bones. This clearly means the future of science is promising in Iran.
Based on reports published in the West, Iran ranks 14 in certain scientific fields. It also ranks first in the region in science production. In some fields, we have better positions than countries like South Korea. So it's not propaganda at all.
We have done no research on transgenic mouse before, but in the past 2 years, we have made visible achievements in the field. We have also set up research centers for the purpose. Despite the problems, we plan to master the technology in the near future.
The statistics published by the International Scopus Bibliographic Database, which contains abstracts and citations for academic journal articles, say Iran ranks first in the Middle East and 20th in the world in scientific progress and science production. Iranian scientists back the newly established report, which says those that precede Iran are Britain, Germany, China, and Japan.
It's not surprising to rank first in the Middle East. Our young generation of students is working round the clock at research centers. They have easy access to necessary facilities and tools for research in different fields.
Given the sheer number of papers and students, the volume of papers published by international scientific journals will increase in near future. But that's not enough. We need to put our scientific growth into service. That's more important than any scientific ranking.
Iran has made great strides in medicine, aerospace, nuclear science, stem cell, cloning research, industry, and energy. With the help of a research reactor in Tehran, the country produces 15 types of anti-cancer drugs and radiomedicines, produced only by a handful of pharmaceutical firms in the West.
Again, impressive statistics for a nation which has been under the cosh. Brother Reza, as an Iranian, you haven't lived there all the time, but you obviously have a very special connection with Iran as well. How has the social or the spiritual makeup, the cultural makeup of Iran been impacted by the revolution, positive or negative? Is there mainly good news on that front as well?
So I remember when, well, I don't remember, but I remember as a young kid, my parents reminding me when the revolution happened, then the war with Iraq began, and that was as a result of the revolution, because Iran had been isolated by the West. Saddam saw it as an easy target, decided to attack, and my hometown where I lived was the border where Iraqi troops came in first, Khorramshahr. So our hometown was the first town that got invaded. We had to move. So the revolution was kind of the beginning of my life, and it has impacted it all the way up to now. And its goals has always been to make Iran independent, make Iran a country not relying either on the East or on the West, not relying on capitalism all communism for its existence. It's outlived communism. Its aim is to continue its existence with its own ideologies to do with economy and politics and so forth. And this is what I believe the West finds as the biggest challenge. Because when it looks everywhere around the world, the only strong ideology, or one of the only strong ideologies remaining in a political format to try and challenge the West, its colonial, imperial kind of ambition it has for the Middle East, is Iran. So a country that you alluded to that has had the most sanctions in the history of all the countries, and yet has managed to produce to some extent science, technology, art. And not only that, it's managed to shape the Middle East in a way where America and Europe does not like, because Middle East has not become subservient and a slave colony of the West. And that's because of Iran's strength in following the line, following the ideology of Iran's revolutionary leaders, thinkers, academics who laid the foundation for Iran's kind of ideology and culture and political kind of mindset. And if you think back 2019, last year, Ayatollah Khamenei reminded people that the revolution isn't stagnant, it does not stay still. If it has made errors, it will look back and learn from the errors and proceed forward. It's not reactionary, but however, it relies on the values that it started off with. So it's like a living, organic being where it's not stagnant. It will try and go forward and evolve and develop, and that will include culture, that will include the spiritual aspect of it, the economical aspect, the political aspect, and even military aspect, because it needs to defend itself from literally surrounded by so many enemies, mainly the West, but surrounded in all directions. So as an Iranian, it kind of gives me pride that we've managed to not only survive, but kind of progress to some extent by holding on to the principles of the leaders that we had from before.
That's fascinating. Maulana, these principles which Reza talks about are very interesting to me. Ayatollah Khamenei did put forward his vision of the next 40 years, and he talks very much about the next 40 years. That's what the narrative has been for the last year. And the fact that the Islamic Republic has survived and has, is still really in its infancy as a nation is a great achievement in itself. But that progress has been made, first of all, with a lot of sacrifice. Millions of people died, as you've both alluded to, in terms of Saddam and the imposed war, or the sacred defense, as the Iranians like to call it, which was designed to topple the nation, but actually seemed to have the reverse effect. It meant it ended up unifying the Iranian nation, and actually, on the back of that, their fervor for creating this new system, this new, if you like, entity, really has been riding. There's a danger, though, isn't there, that with the emergence of the internet, with neoliberalism and its values and its kind of pernicious ability to be able to seep into all societies and to almost create monocultures, isn't there a danger that the Islamic Republic will also have a new generation which may lose sight of those values that the nation has been built on so far, and actually sell out to hyper-capitalist values of ego, narcissism, if you like, self-aggrandizement, or kind of really just me materialism? Is it a danger in the Islamic Republic that it could also go the same way as a lot of the other nations that come up against hyper-capitalism?
Well, I mean, Islamic Republic of Iran and its people are under attack from all over the world. I mean, I was speaking to an Australian today, and he was saying that in Australia there are only 6 or 7 pornographic channels, and you cannot watch them without paying. In Iran and Middle East, there are hundreds of them for free. And who is providing all these services? The outsiders. The aim is to corrupt the nation. The aim is to destroy the nation. So, of course, Iran is under attack. The whole nation, whole Middle East, and entire Muslims are under attack. And therefore, they need to be alert, and they need to be aware of this, and they should do something to stop corruption growing, and we are seeing the results. We see some of the worst example of corruption coming up from the Muslim countries. So this is what and where we need to, and especially Iranian authorities need to concentrate and work. I have said this in Iran, to Iranian media, that the scholars who were bringing up the revolutionary Iranians were with the people, and now because of the responsibilities and duties, the best of the scholars are behind the table and not mixing with the people. That is the mistake that is going on, and they have to concentrate to bring the most educated scholars and force them to mix with the downtrodden people to understand their problem. As Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ used to say, that if you want to if you want to win the hearts of people, you have to be with them, you have to live like them, and face the problems and difficulties of them by yourself.
Very interesting point. There is this notion of seminaries. I mean, of course, everybody regards the Islamic Republic as being run by seminarians. The reality is that the seminarians are based in Qom. The government is still run by largely secular politicians, and it's still very much in the hands of arguably also economists and the bazaris themselves. But the ulama that you talk about is fascinating, that if they don't actually live among the people in the ordinary way, and they withdraw to the seminaries or do desk jobs only, then they can't be, if you like, the personalities or the characters which others can emulate. And the emulation is what really, I think, gives the power and the strength, arguably, to especially Ahl Tashayyu Marjaiyat, or the leadership of Rehbar. It's really looking at, say, Grand Ayatollah Khamenei, looking at his personality, his character, his way of sitting, his living, his eating, his lack of, if you like, decadence, and his lack of accumulation of wealth, the house he has being humble, no corruption in terms of passing on political roles to his children. You hardly even hear about that side of it. So it seems to me as though he himself embodies very much a prophetic-like personality and character which people can aspire to, whereas the government itself has fallen foul, it seems at times, which Ayatollah Khamenei himself has criticised some of the governments who have been in power during those 40 years as being governments which lost sight of the original values. Is it a danger that the people in power, those in government, the intermediaries, don't do for the people what Ayatollah Khamenei or the actual revolutionary Gnostics or the saintly characters and even the warriors, I might say, the aspirations they have, and the aspiration of the middle class merchant elite, for instance, and then the aspirations of the poor and the people who are on the ground. Is there a difference between these three elements in terms of the way they see the future of the Islamic Republic? Maulana.
Yes, I mean, in every revolution, I mean, wherever the revolution has taken place, we see these examples. According to some researchers, it takes up to 50 years to settle down after a revolution. So we cannot, and none of the Islamic Republic of Iran's authorities have claimed that they are infallibles. Imam Khomeini himself used to say, we are trying to establish an Islamic Republic. We are nowhere near the republic that was established by Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ. Yeah. So as long as this kind of acknowledgement is there, and efforts are being made to go in the direction of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ and his type of government, and as Imam Ali used to say, we can never be equal to him, because he was an infallible who had access to the knowledge to Allah, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knew exactly how to rule, and we can never be equal to him. Yeah. But we should make an effort, we should try. And inshallah, Imam Mahdi ajallallah ta'ala faraj, who would be the right person, the Messiah, the Savior, would be the right person to establish a proper government in this world.
I'll come to Father Gelli on this issue just after this short video, because I'd like to get his take on the Messiah and the coming of the Mahdi and the links to the idea of a divine governance on earth. Again, a Khalifa-based governance or an Imamate-based government, and perhaps a Messiah-based government. That's an interesting notion that we'll conclude on, hopefully, just after this short, I think, comment from Professor Mohammad Marandi, a well-known Iranian professor and commentator from Tehran University.
To compare Iran today to Saudi Arabia, Iran before the revolution was somewhat like Saudi Arabia today, completely dependent on oil wealth. It imported everything, and there were almost no PhD programs at any university in Iran 41 years ago during the Shah's reign. And in most areas there were no MA programs as well. So anyone who wanted to further his or her education had to go abroad, and usually to the United States, and they would stay there afterwards. Now we see the difference between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Iranian technology and Iranian scientific advancements has led the country to a stage where the United States cannot attack it because Iran's defense capabilities, as one example, have become so powerful that a war with Iran would be unwinnable for the United States. So that alone, Iran's defense capabilities and its advances in this area, I think that alone is reflective of how things have changed in this country and how this has limited U.S. options.
You saw pictures there of a professor who was arrested in America when he went over there very recently, and it shows how threatened the Americans are about the knowledge capital that exists in Iran, that they are trying to kill people. I know of many cases now of nuclear scientists who have been killed. Israeli Mossad agents have gone in to Iran and actually killed these people. This is the level of threat that is being felt by the Israeli and American alliance across the Middle East at the rise of Iranian knowledge. Father Gelli, coming back to this idea of a government which aspires towards moral, prophetic morality, towards a goodness, a virtuous government. We've lost that vision in the West. We can't say that Boris Johnson or Donald Trump really are after a virtuous governance for the world, let alone for their own people. As a Christian, as somebody who's awaiting the Messiah, as Isa alayhi salam, just as Muslims are, how do you feel about the idea of at least one country out there saying very openly, we're out to try and create a space or a nation which embodies itself or models itself on those characters and is awaiting their arrival and is actively working for their return? How do you feel about that?
Well, I did my MA dissertation on Islamic eschatology only a few years ago, and I looked at the figures of Imam al-Mahdi and Nabi Isa, or Jesus, in the ideas of Islamic thought. But of course, I mean, Jesus of the Islamic tradition and the Jesus of Christianity, not quite the same, but let us say there are enough similarities. So basically what we're talking about here is the notion of eschatology, which in Islam is al-akhirah, which is the time, the end time, which, and you mentioned, of course, a notion of, or Maulana mentioned a notion of Imam al-Mahdi, the hidden Imam, who'll be coming to bring about a realm of justice and restore injustice and punish the wicked. And that, in a way, to some extent, mirrors the idea of a return of Jesus to rule the world, which is announced, which is mentioned in the Gospels and indeed in the book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, which is all about that. But I want to say this as well, which is important, because all may look like a future stage, a future state. And there's always something, it's wonderful, we believe in a future which will perfect God's design for his world, but also we believe in the here and now, which is the whole idea, as you, Moxini, were saying about the idea of government, a righteous government now. And so there is a concept which we have in Christian theology called realized eschatology. realized eschatology, the sense in which, talking about the Christian, Jesus is not only Jesus to come, but Jesus who comes here and now. Jesus who comes here and now in good works, in works of charity, in works of justice, in caring for the poor, in affirming virtuous principles in personal life and in public life. So that is not something we don't have to put it off until the end of the world, of a final judgment. But the battle, the eschatology, the end is happening here and now. So the Prophet is here and now. I mean, in Islam, you have, especially in the Shia tradition, the notion of commemoration of the great sacrifice of Karbala. Imam Hussein, even I wrote a little book which is available on Amazon, Karbala Forever, the enduring battle, which is again, it's a commonality with Christians and Muslims, or continue to fight the battle started, fought by Imam Hussein at Karbala, which is an enduring thing, which is a battle against tyranny, a battle for justice, a battle for goodness, a battle for redemption. And that's where we can unite and be together here and now. It's a big thing, it's a big struggle, but God willing will win it.
Well, last two sentences for Reza and Maulana. Reza, we know that the Islamic Republic has helped the oppressed in Yemen. We know that they stood up in Syria against the machinations of the imperialist powers. We know that the Islamic Republic of Iran has stood up for the people of Iraq, the nation which actually attacked it in the past. We know too in Lebanon, where the Islamic Republic has been instrumental in supporting the oppressed against the Israeli oppressors. And of course, Palestine shouldn't go unmentioned. Many other areas where the Islamic Republic of Iran has delivered on Ayatollah Khomeini's dream of supporting the the oppressed of the world. How do you feel, as a young Iranian, do you feel that's something that the Islamic Republic should continue delivering on in terms of their remit? They could easily say, we've got our own problems internally, we don't need to worry about the externals. But do you feel it's something that the Islamic Republic of Iran should continue doing, i.e. helping the people of the world?
Well, it's easy for me to say yes, since I live here. But I do believe that it should continue. I've seen the changes that it's caused, the positive impacts that it has. And ultimately, as an Iranian who believes in the revolution and believes in what we have at the moment, it's something worth fighting for. I've even considered going back to live there, especially in the last 2 months and incidents that have happened, because I feel like I am here, but I'm not contributing to something that my uncle died defending during the Iran-Iraq war. So I believe that some have given up, unfortunately, but there are many who haven't, and I hope I can count myself on those who hasn't given up.
Thank you, Reza. Maulana, you've seen it from its birth. Those of us who still have the dream that the Islamic Republic of Iran can offer us a moral, if you like, state, a moral state that can actually work towards countering the hyper-capitalist, greedy, money-lender immorality of the modern hyper-capitalist, if you like, nation states that we largely see out there. Does the Islamic Republic of Iran and its leadership and its people have an obligation to God, the Prophet, and to the Holy Imam Mahdi alayhi salam to maintain this revolution in its original, if you like, dream and aspiration state?
Not only the leaders, every single Muslim, whether Sunni or Shia, has the responsibility to establish the word of God on this planet Earth, because this is the duty and responsibility and obligation of every single Muslim. And we should not be afraid of all ill wishers, because we believe in promises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promises are not false promises. When God promises in Torah or Bible or Quran that the most oppressed people of the world will inherit the world, this is not a false promise. Messiah, Imam Mahdi, would come and inshallah would lead the leadership of the oppressed people in the world, and the word of Allah, word of God will never be suppressed. al-Islam ya'lu wa la yu'la alayh.
Gender fluidity, abortion, immoralities of every sexual deviance that are going, the possibility of wars that are conducted by robots, the notion of human cloning, engineering of humans, creating droids, creating cyborgs. All of this is all very well, but without a morality and without an ethical base, without a prophetic rooting in our ethics as a human civilization, where will we end up? Whether it's through Chinese imperialism or American imperialism, if it is godless, if it has no basis, no prophetic morality, but everything is relative and according to what the money lenders want on this earth, can you really fathom a world in which you will live without any morality, without any rules and regulations, or without any, if you like, submission to a higher force? I can't countenance the thought, and the fact that even one space, if one space on earth remains with those values, I feel it's our obligation to at least give it a chance, at least to sort of hear it out. Here in the West, we've been blinkered by money and by affluence and by material gains. Perhaps we've lost our morality or our sense of empathy towards what nature really wants us to do and what our human nature, our fitra, actually demands, and let alone the idea of listening to what the divine creator demands of us. Thank you to my guests, Brother Reza and Syed Muhammad Razavi, as well as Father Frank Gelli, as ever, great contributions. Until the next edition of Critical Eye, thank you for watching.